Could the Miami Dolphins be looking to replace Patrick Paul in the draft? It's something I've talked about, but I'm going to take a stance you might not expect today when we discuss this, because the mock drafts are starting to add up, and they're starting to add up to us taking a tackle and leaving Patrick Paul in the fray. So we will discuss that. Also, if the Miami Dolphins don't have things go their way this year and there needs to be a reset, what could it look like? We will discuss multiple facets of that scenario today on this episode. So we got a lot to talk about. Do me the favor, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. And as always, let's get into this one.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jaelan has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Field on the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Shula, Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. It's going over the touchdown again. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. And we are back here for another one. Appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Shout out to all of you in the chat. I see the homie Fox has showed up. All of y'all in the chat. Robert Thomason, Chuck, Justin, Charles Hilton, Omar, Russell Swan, Greg Sosa, Tyler, I Am Him. Shout out to all of you in the chat, Jim, Ruckus, Jason Stamps, Yo I Hear, Jeffrey Ward, shout out Isaiah, shout out to all of you. Nick already in the chat. Nick, are you the brother of Jason Queck? Because I feel like I've seen that name. Is there a Jason Queck and a Nick Queck? Dean Smith, what's going on, buddy? How you doing? Wesley, what's going on? What's up, Jeff? So shout out to all of y'all. 1017 man. Shout out to, hey, there's 1017 man. The man who doesn't like me to use the Lord's name in vain. Nick Queck says no. Okay. I could have swore. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't there a Jason Queck? Josh T, what's going on? Stacy, first time you've been able to catch me live. Well, I hope you enjoy. Well, so first thing I want to talk about today. First of all, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new. No pressure, eh? Stacy, first time catching me live, huh? No pressure. Jason Keck. Ah, there you go. Robert nailed it. All right. Okay, so Kendall Lamm. All right. Here, Kendall Lamm has signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. Wouldn't it be hilarious? Wouldn't it be absolutely hilarious if Kendall Lamm plays better in Philly and Howie Roseman gets more praise? That's number one. Number two, I thought this guy was retiring. Didn't we have to twist his arm to come back last year? Wasn't he retiring? I could have swore we had to twist his arm to even come back last year. Hey brother, I wish. This year I got to get down there. Last year, some stuff happened in Richmond's private life with his wife, and that's why he wasn't able to get down to that Raiders game. But I got to get down there this year with him. But Kendall Lamm, back to this Kendall Lamm thing. What are we saying here? I thought this guy was retiring. And that leads me to another thing. And we'll talk about Patrick Paul today. Don't worry, we will. We'll get into it. Teron Armstead. And this is, listen, and we'll talk about the whole Patrick Paul thing, but this is where the Terron Armstead thing comes into too. And I've said this, Patrick Paul's play last year and Terron Armstead should not hold you hostage if the right guy falls into your lap. Period. Why do you think I want Will Campbell? I'm all in on Will Campbell. Listen, if the Dolphins have Will Campbell, Kenneth Grant, and Will Johnson on the board, that's a tough decision. Now, I think they're going to go Will Johnson on that, but that's a tough pass on Will Campbell because he can kick in at left guard and he could potentially, even, I don't care about his 32-inch arms. He deserves a shot at left tackle. Now, at left guard, I think you're talking about, I'm dropping my guard big board this week, and spoiler alert, he's number one. We're talking about like potential Quentin Nelson levels here. Now, I don't think, I don't want to say poor man or dollar store Quentin Nelson because I don't think that does him justice. But, let's call him Quentin Nelson light. He's not quite Quentin Nelson, but he could be an all-pro gold jacket guard. Could Will Campbell. And on a cheap deal, and then maybe, hey, Greer could be gone by the time that deal ends and we actually bring in a guy that'll pay him. I don't know. But, I don't think, and I say the same thing about Calais Campbell, right? If Will Johnson's gone, Will Campbell's gone, would Calais Campbell not making a decision and Benito Jones and Matt Dickerson being the only backups behind Zach Sealer, would that make me pause on Kenneth Grant? Are you crazy? And Jason Stamps makes a great point. And you can say it for defensive tackles too, Jason. Guard prices are going up. Defensive tackle prices are going up. And I hate that Kenneth Grant is getting pinned as just a nose tackle. That's a damn lie. Watch the film. Watch the athlete. This guy can slide from 0 to a 4-eye, no problem. At his size, let me tell you this. At his size, if you can stand up Deion Walker and rush him as a 5-tech, what do you think you can do with Kenneth Grant, who moves with his weight much better? This guy's been clock going 18.75 miles per hour at like 350. Now he's down to about 332 if I remember correctly. Let me double check on that just so I give you guys the facts because I don't want people saying, oh, and I just did the big board too. But yeah. Let me tell you right here, 331. But he's been clock going 18.75 miles per hour at 350 plus. What do you think he's moving at 331, shedding 19 pounds? This guy's probably breaking 19 miles per hour at that way. That's crazy. 6'3" and 5'8", that's nuts. So my whole point is, and I've said this, and this goes for basically any position. You should, unless you have a great player at said position, good players, average players, mediocre players should never stop. And yeah, I threw good players in there. Should never stop you from drafting potential blue chip generational talent. You look at Will Johnson. Ramsey wouldn't stop you from drafting Will Johnson because Will Johnson does a great thing in terms of he could come and be number 2 year 1, take over role, CB1 role in year 2, and you could start sliding Ramsey more to safety a la Woodson, the old Charles Woodson stuff. Or same thing goes for, listen, even Zach Sealer. Zach Sealer shouldn't prevent you from taking a Kenneth Grant. And you're going to say, Reason, you're crazy. And I'm going to say, well, yeah, am I? Because go look at Sealer's contract. He's due for new money very soon. And who knows what he's going to ask with the way that market is rising. This guy's looking at Christian Wilkins getting that much money and saying, I was producing better on less snaps. And then look at how good I was year 1. But being the main guy. Let's be real. We probably beat the Colts if we have Zach Sealer. And let's be real at that defense. if it wasn't Chop or Zach Sealer going off, that defense wasn't really standing on his head as much. But when those two were clicking, oh boy, we were making issues, and that defense was keeping us in games for real. So you look at Zach Sealer could look, oh well, I want money. Look at the market, but you got Kenneth Grant now, and that's why I've said this before. Even if I bring back Calais Campbell, I'm double dipping. This defensive tackle class is too deep. I want you to add another pick in between 48 and 98. Give me somewhere in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. That way it makes it easier. So like at, say, 13 or 48, I take a defensive tackle, I can come back at 116. And in between, remember, we've got 4 picks between 116 and 155. So in there, I could double dip. That's also where I think they could start really seriously considering drafting a quarterback. But I think that's where I would try to double dip on defensive tackle is right there. And you know why? Because Calais, even if he comes back this year, he ain't going to be here in 2026. Okay, that's A. B, the point I just made about Zach Sealer. It's the same reason why you double dipped with Chop and Kamara last year. You didn't know about Bradley Chubb's future and injury. You didn't know about Jaelan Phillips' injury. Shit. SHIT was murky. So it's the same thing here. I would double dip at defensive tackle in this deep of a class. It just makes that much sense. Like, I'm telling you. Let's say, I'll give you a couple scenarios. Kenneth Grant, you take him at 13. All right, okay, cool. Come back at 116, go get a guy like CJ West, maybe. I love him out of Indiana. He didn't make my list, but I told you he'd be the next one up. Right? I was really battling between him and Jamari Caldwell at 15, but I love CJ West too. There you go. All right, 13, we go Will Johnson, which would be crazy. It would be Studley. Or we go Will Campbell, which would be just as Studley. 48, because of character concerns, Walter Nolan drops. Either you move up a little bit to get him, or he falls in your lap. Everyone was doubting Tavondre Sweat. Jalen Carter should have been, I told y'all all in Jalen Carter's year coming out, even with those character concerns, even with the DWI, what did I say? I said I would find a way to package Christian Wilkins and some draft picks and move up and get Jalen Carter. That's what I said. People thought I was crazy. Oh, Christian Wilkins is this, Christian Wilkins is that. No. It's the same thing with Jerome Baker. Everyone thought I was crazy when I hated the contract. Then everyone started coming back around and started apologizing to me and saying, yo, Reason, you were right. And then when Baker got sent packing in an Uber, everyone said, yo, Reason, you were right. And the heat I took, that was the only Twitter post I've ever turned the comments off of. And you know why? It wasn't because of the vitriol or whatever was being spewed at me. It's because of the idiocy. I had people compare. I'm not even lying to you. I'll never forget this. People were comparing Jerome Baker to Fred Warner in my comments. It was lunacy. It was absolute. I was like, is this for real right now? Am I really? And you could tell they were casuals because, he had 100 plus tackles. Yeah, and like 60, 70 of them came 5+ yards beyond the line of scrimmage. What good is that? But he loves his mama. Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'll never forget that. Man. I was so bitter about that. That Jerome Baker stuff. And then everyone came back around and said, Reason, you're right. Should have handed out that money. Blah, 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 blah. Now, people will say, well, Reason, you said hand out the money to Tua. You know why I said hand out the money to Tua? Because, and I kept talking about this. We talked about this every time we talked about his money last offseason. The cap was projected to go up $30 million each year over the next 3 years. So every time we talk about his money, I would bring up what if we signed him for what we eventually signed him around, I would talk about how the percentage of his cap, he would never even touch 20% of our cap, while the average for quarterbacks is about 21%. And if you go back to the math, by year 3 in his contract, he's going to be around 15% of the cap. He's going to be about 6% under the league average, when guys are going to be, in 3 years, with this cap going up about another 60 million on top of the 30 million it just went up, that's 90 million on top of the cap Tua signed under. Guys are going to be at 65, 70 million. Brock Purdy wants 60 plus million right now. That's why he's not in San Francisco. That's why him in San Francisco haven't worked out a deal. Brock Purdy is asking for 60. He wants more than Dak Prescott. You know why? Because the Cowboys gave Dak Prescott that basically ironclad $60 million a year contract for a guy who ain't achieved nothing. He's pretty much achieved less than Tua. You know, Tua's led the league in passing yards. Tua's led the league in passer rating. Tua's led the league in completion percentage. Yeah, he's only been to one playoff game. Dak's been to multiple playoff games, lost them all. He's in a much weaker division. There's no Buffalo. Now you got to deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. But there's no Buffalo Bills stranglehold. Dak's been there for how long now? Much longer than Tua's been in Miami. And that's the thing. He's screwed up. So Brock Purdy's looking at him and saying, I've been to the NFC Championship multiple times. I've been to the Super Bowl. What is this? Why is Dak? It's the same thing where if Tua was making Dak's money in the NFC, Brock Purdy would look at him and say, why is he making that money when I've been to the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship? It's a valid argument. Now, they're going to the 49ers are pushing back and saying, guess what? Last year when we had all those injuries to Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, you didn't carry us. You weren't good enough. That's what they're sitting there and saying to Brock. That's why they don't want to give him $60 million a year. Because he didn't put the team on his back. So, yeah, I don't know. So, but think about that. If Brock is asking for $60 million, think about this. What are guys like Jaden Daniels and stuff going to be asking for when they're up? And you know they're going to get extended early. They're not going to wait till the 5th year for a guy like Jaden. Jaden will get extended in year 4. So you're about 3 years away. You're along the timeline I'm talking about. If Brock Purdy breaks $60 million, in 2 years, guys are going to be around 70. Tua's going to be at like 55 million. He's going to be like 15 million less than the market average. Now, obviously, I'm simplifying it by going on an annual average. But he's going to be like $15 million less. If he stays healthy, if Tua stays healthy, that will be a steal. And this is what I talked about last year because we knew the cap was about to explode over a 3-year span. So I said, get it done now. Don't wait another year. Now, obviously, if he would have got hurt and they would have waited another year, we'd be in a better position. But I'm sorry, I forgot my crystal ball in the closet. I didn't bring it on, you know? And I didn't know that I was playing Miss Cleo with injuries. It's the same thing I do with, like people are asking me about Will Johnson and his turf toe. Listen, let me tell you something. I don't have access to his medicals. So I don't know how extensive the turf toe is. All I can go is based off the film. And what the film tells me is, Jesus Christ. Sorry, 1017, man. I apologize. My bad. JFC. If this guy is on the board, run to the podium at 13. See, I remember 1017. See, I'm getting better. I'm trying. Just like I spell out curse words now. I try not to say them unless I get really revved up. Then I'll say, pardon my French, cover the ears. But I try to spell them out now. So I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. All right. But I'm trying. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, man, the quarterback market is a sticky situation. These guys are always going to get paid. And the next wave, if this guy breaks 60 million, they're going to look, JD5 and all these guys are going to be like, yo, 70 million, like right now. And we're all going to be like, and what's really going to tap our ASS is if Dak doesn't re-up with Dallas and goes and gets even more money somewhere else. You know, it's like we just saw Cleveland F up the market with this Myles Garrett deal. The guy's getting quarterback money, $40 million plus a year for an elite edge rusher. Are you crazy? Now, you know, I've said this. What do you think Chop's going to ask for? Sorry, not Chop. Jaelan Phillips. What do you think Jaelan Phillips is going to ask for? Yeah, Jaelan Phillips gets injured all the time, but he's got elite upside to his game. Now, if he comes back and the lower body injuries have stacked up and the explosiveness is gone from his game, okay, then you're like, yeah, no. But if that explosiveness is still there, and let's say he stays healthy this year and racks up 15 or 16 sacks, you're going to look at him, you're going to be like, yeah, the injury history, but he's going to say, yeah, but I showed you how explosive and elite my upside is. That's at least 20 million to me if Myles Garrett's making 40. That's crazy. Like, the Browns, oh man, it's going to send me on a rant because the Browns did it again. And I've already talked about this. They effed up the market with Watson and they literally said, hey guys, hold our own beers. Let's double fist. Let's go give 40 plus million to Myles Garrett. And now the rumor, what I'm hearing through the grapevines, is they're about to take Abdul Carter. And I've talked about this before. I've been hearing that they're going to take Abdul Carter. And I'm hearing it even more right now. So what? Are you serious? Really? You could have moved off Myles Garrett. You could have got it. Do I got to be the GM for other teams too? You could have moved off Myles Garrett, got at least a first and a third. If you would have got a bidding war, you probably could have got a first, a second, and like 2 fours. Really, if you would have got a bidding war, and there would have been a bidding war, you could have got like 4 or 5 picks, including, you know, at least 1 day 1 pick and 1 day 2 pick, maybe 2 day 2 picks. Easy. And you decided to give him $40 million when you're just going to go draft Abdul Carter? Brother, do Cleveland Browns fans and management really think they're a Myles Garrett new money contract and an Abdul Carter addition away from winning the Super Bowl? Or hell, winning their division? Or hell, making the playoffs? Are we serious right now? You might as well have stacked up picks and tried to get one of those guys in the second round, like a Jalen Milroe. Hey, maybe go relive the Brandon Whedon era and go get Tyler Shuck, who's old. Go bring him in. You know, maybe go get a Kyle McCord. I don't know. But, man, just such poor management, and it's costing the rest of the NFL because I'm going back to this. I'm already talking about it. I know I'm ahead of the curve. Jaelan Phillips money, especially if he stays healthy this year. Now I reported to patrons, I reported to channel members. I've heard the Dolphins are open to negotiating at the right time if the cost is right. What does that mean? That means they think they could probably get him well below market value right now because of his injury history. But the problem is going to be if this guy bets on himself, plays well this year, then he's gained not a lot of leverage, but a little. So, you know, which would be hilarious. Like, imagine if Will Campbell and Will Johnson are on the board and these guys draft like Mike, and I love Mike Green, make my man crush list. But imagine if they draft like Mike Green, you know, like then they just go edge because they're just like, yeah, we're gonna move off Chubb and we don't think we're gonna pay Phillips and blah 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 blah. Yeah, Browns want to sell tickets. Well, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I will give them this. This is what they're right on. They are taking the right player. So I won't knock them for that. I will knock them for re-upping Myles Garrett at 40 plus million if you're just going to take Abdul Carter. But they are taking the right player. If they wanted to sell tickets, they would take Shedeur Sanders, who's the wrong player. Just being honest. Now, what'll the Giants do? I've heard they love Shedeur. I've also heard they love Dart. So the Dart noise in the top 10 is real, man. I'm telling you right now. It started coming over after the Senior Bowl, and it's because teams got a first-hand look of him dropping back under center, and they liked the footwork. They liked what they saw. They liked how quickly he was adapting. He's really killed the interview process and the whiteboard, from what I understand. Like, he's a smart player, man. Lane Kiffin coached up a good one. They know the coaching he came from. See, people are trying to make it a detriment that he came from Lane Kiffin offense and coaching, where, you know, they were trying to get receivers open, which, guys, go to the NFL. What's the name of the game? You're trying to scheme receivers open. So just because it works in college, because you're not against 11 defenders who are the best in the world at what they do, you're against college guys where maybe two on that defense will make it, unless you're facing a Georgia or an Alabama, you know, et cetera, those type of teams. You know, like, trust me, the NFL looks at Lane Kiffin coaching to Dart as a positive, not a negative, like some of the media try to make it out to be. I'm telling you. If Dart lands in the right environment, like, get ready, man. Like, if that guy goes to... Here's the thing. Look, whichever one... Because two are going to go in the top 10, I think, okay? If Dart falls out of the top 10, he's not getting past Pittsburgh. If Shedeur falls out of the top 10, he's not getting past Pittsburgh. That's why I think 3 quarterbacks are going in the top 20. I think 7, I'll be honest with you, and I think I've said this. I think 7 quarterbacks are going in the first 4 rounds. So, like, I honestly do. I think Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Milroe, Tyler Shuck, Kyle McCord, and Quinn Ewers all have a chance to go in the first 4 rounds. I've heard second to third for Kyle McCord, which makes sense. I have a 3rd round grade on him. Makes sense. Tyler Shuck, they're really high on the NFL. Quinn Ewers, the NFL is really high on. Jaelan Milroe, alien, so he'll go. Right? And then Cam Ward, Jackson Dart's my QB2, Shedeur's my QB3. So, in that order. So, yeah, like, and the NFL's high. So I think you're going to have 7 quarterbacks go in the first 4 rounds. You know, now, a guy I think the Shanahan tree is going to love is Max Brosmer out of Minnesota. I really think they're going to love, I really think the Shanahan tree is going to love a guy like Max Brosmer. I think on day 3, the Riley Leonards, Will Howards, Dylan Gabriels, Curtis Rooks, Seth Hennigans, Brady Cooks, those could make sense. Enough with the Shedeur bashing. You're wrong, Reason. Well, bro, what am I wrong about? Because I have an opinion and I stand on my opinion? No, guess what? I am right on Dart. Dart's the better prospect. Dart has the higher upside. Dart has the liver arm. Dart is the better athlete. What are we talking about here? Like, what are we talking about? Shedeur throws timing routes with anticipation, like, and he's accurate from the short to intermediate level. But none of them are superpowers. I've talked about this. None of them are superpowers. He's not. Those are superpowers with Tua. Those are not superpowers. You know how I can watch Shedeur's tape and know that he's 3rd or 4th? Because I've been doing this and I got a track record. And I've proven that I know what I'm talking about. So, you know, JD5 and that boy Drake May were my favorites in the draft last year by a mile. I was talking about Jaden Daniels in 2019 when he beat Oregon and Herbert. I know what I'm talking about with this. All right? I watched Shedeur's tape. It's not that overly impressive. He has moments. He has flashes. He makes good... But then he has total moments where you scratch your head and you're like, what is this guy doing? Turns 4-yard sacks into 12 or 14-yard sacks. He's got 0 pocket awareness, 0 feel for the pocket. And instead of improving himself in his game, he'll blame the offensive line, which the offensive line was not great. But what does a real quarterback do? Even when you know the offensive line is at fault, you still take the blame and you still buy them watches at Christmas with that nil money you're making. So, yeah. And I'm going to be honest with you. Shedeur is the second round. The only first round talent in this at quarterback in this class is Cam Ward. Jackson Dart and Shedeur Sanders are second round talents. And guess what? If Tyler Shuck wasn't going to be 26 in September and didn't have an injury history, watch the tape. Tyler Shuck is far more dynamic of a player than Shedeur Sanders. Cal McCord does all the things Shedeur does. Throws with timing, anticipation, kills the short to intermediate level. I like his deep ball better than Shedeur. So, yeah, no. Like, there's issues. If Jalen Milroe was a more polished passer, he would be a much more of a dynamic option than Shedeur. If Quinn Ewers didn't look like he regressed last year, Quinn Ewers was projected to be the top quarterback in this class. Shedeur would be like QB5 if Quinn Ewers didn't get hurt and have a bad year, and Jalen Milroe wasn't 26 with an injury. It was going to be 26 with an injury history. And that's real talk, bro. That's just what it is. Again, watch the tape. Tyler Shuck makes throws on the move, as does Jackson Dart, that Shedeur Sanders could only do in his dreams. Like, I've shown the highlight here. Go watch that clip from the Gator Bowl. Show me where Shedeur Sanders can make that throw that Jackson Dart made in the Gator Bowl. Show me where he can make that throw. Like, that is next level stuff. There's Josh Allen-esque stuff to Dart's game if you watch the tape. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say. You know, again, watch the tape. Nothing Shedeur does is a superpower. Again, he's even QB2 on some people's class, and this is viewed as a super weak class. And I could be objective. Jackson Dart is my number 2, but I can still sit here and say he's a second round pick on my board and how I've graded him. So I don't even play bias. But yeah, man, if you got to bet on someone at 13, you bet on that upside of Dart. You bet on that. Crazy. Again, someone show me Shedeur Sanders making that Jackson Dart throw in the Gator Bowl, please. I really want to see something even close to that. Even close. Actually, you know what? I'll be honest, Jeremiah. I think this class is a little stronger. Just a tad. Just a tad stronger. You know, like, let's start comparing, right? Like, if you look at, for example, Jalen Milroe, right? The unpolished, potentially athletic guy that we like the upside of in the right situation in that class was Malik Willis, remember, out of Liberty? And I think Jalen Milroe is much more of an alien in terms of like athlete. Like the upside is crazy with Jalen Milroe. You know? So I do think, I see what you're saying. I do think it's the weakest class since that class, 110%. 110%. I just think it's a little stronger. Like Kenny Pickett, okay? Like, think about it. Kenny Pickett didn't go to like, what, 20 or 21? Cam Ward's going to go number 1 overall. You know, there was no surefire number 1 pick like that. I think Jackson Dart is better than Kenny Pickett. I think Shedeur is better than Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take, listen, let me put it this way. I'll take Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Tyler Shuck, probably Quinn Ewers and Callum McCord, And I'd probably even bet on Jalen Milroe's upside before drafting Kenny Pickett. I hated Kenny Pickett coming out. If you go back and do the receipts, I hated Kenny Pickett. So, the only one I really liked in that class was Sam Howell. And he was the only one who showed some starter moxie. So, and we're going to see what he does in Seattle, but he was the only one that showed he looked like he was a little capable of being a starter. That's why I want him as my backup. And that's why I've been preaching for him. So, Anyways, all right, we've been, that's a long opening. So let's get into this because I got a lot to talk about. So let's talk about Patrick Paul. But before we do, let's lead up to that. All right, let's get into that. But let's start off with this article from Barry Jackson from today. And this is going to lead us into the Patrick Paul topic. All right. So, the Miami Hurricanes have sent more players to the Dolphins than any other university, and this month's free agent class delivered another, cornerback Artie Burns. And that Canes to Fins aspect of his homecoming is particularly meaningful to Burns, who attended Miami Northwestern and was a football and track star growing up. Being born and raised in Miami to be a professional here is a dream come true, Burns said during his introductory Zoom session with Dolphins reporters on Tuesday. Miami had the best opportunity for me to show my talents, so he took him to South Beach. Burns, 6 foot, said the Dolphins want to use his versatility. I can play corner and nickel. Those are the things they want me to do. I definitely want to be around the ball more to make more plays. Nickel can highlight that for me. Both positions present a bunch of opportunities. So right there, he's kind of telling you his role, right? This is, I told y'all, it feels like he was being brought in to fill in for Ciaran Neal in terms of the backup corner or nickel if you need it behind Kohu and such. Burns, 29, said he thought the Dolphins were going to draft him in 2016, but Miami opted for Lamm Tunsil at 13. And Burns went 26 to Pittsburgh, where he had 4 interceptions and 32 starts in 4 years, but also struggled at times. The Steelers moved on after his rookie contract. He signed with Chicago, where he missed the first season with a torn ACL and appeared 11 games in his second there. His next stop was Seattle. Burns has been pretty good in pass coverage in a limited role in 3 years there, which included some time on Seattle's practice squad. In 2022, he played just 16 defensive snaps and for the Seahawks and didn't allow a catch and 1 target. And 231 defensive snaps for Seattle in 2023, he allowed a decent 89.4 passer rating in his coverage area. In just 51 defensive snaps last season for Seattle, he yielded 3 completions and 7 targets for 29 yards and no touchdowns, equal to a strong 55.1 passer rating in his coverage area. Burns said the Dolphins' defensive system is similar to the one he played in Seattle. Seahawks coach Mike McDonald coached with the Dolphins' defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver in Baltimore. We all know that. The Dolphins haven't signed a veteran to replace Kendall Fuller, at least at this point. That leaves Jalen Ramsey, Kader Kohu, and Burns as the only cornerbacks on the roster with extensive NFL experience. The other corners on the roster are Cam Smith, Ethan Bonner, Storm Duck, Isaiah Johnson, Ryan Cooper Jr., and Jason Maitre. Well, we know they're high on Duck and Maitre. The new regime seems lower on Bonner than Fangio was, and the jury's still out, obviously, on Cam Smith. If Burns makes the team as expected, he will. He will be the 51st player to suit up for a game for the Dolphins. The Dolphins had 3 Canes on last year's teams, and Jaelan Phillips, Calais Campbell, and Braxton Berrios. So, before we keep going here, there are a few things I want to say on this. Number one, Cam Smith is going to be given another shot, but they're going to be bringing in competition. Well, they're going to draft. I'm telling you right now. Listen, I want Will Johnson or Kenneth Grant or Will Campbell or Armand Membo. Membo will be gone at 13, but I think they're pretty much locked in on corner. Corner is going to be 13 or 48. Now, at 13, it could be Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. At 48, maybe it's a Benjamin Morrison if he's still around. A guy I really like, Trey Amos. He made my man crush list. At 48 would make a ton of sense. But I think they're targeting, corner for sure with one of those picks. I just think Will Johnson, he's, top 5 player in this draft. You can't pass that up. You can't. The medicals check out. You roll. And let me tell you this. No one's got more access to Will Johnson and Kenneth Grant and everything they do and all their medicals, and Mason Graham if he slips, which is a pipe dream. I don't even talk about it because it's not happening. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Will Johnson would be glorious. Hell, Will Johnson at 13, Kenneth Grant drops into the 20s, and you trade up to the 20s, and you came out with Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson. My God, that defense is disgusting. But, oh my God, I got to stop getting excited. I digress. My whole point is Stephen Ross, who's got more access to these players than Stephen Ross? If they take Will Johnson, they're fully comfortable with that, with the turf toe and the little hamstring issue he has going on right now. So, but yeah, Artie Burns, I've said this before, I'll say it again. He's going to be Ciaran Neal's replacement. He can offer you nickel snaps, corner snaps, and special team snaps. This is their replacement for Ciaran Neal. And he probably got a stamp of approval from Mike McDonald to Anthony Weaver. End of story. Now, continuing on. Alexander Mattison. New Dolphins running back Alexander Mattison, who essentially flipped teams with Raiders running back Raheem Mostert, spoke with Mike McDaniel before signing here, and Mike McDaniel told him, quote, told me to bring my big boy pants down to South Beach, an exciting offense, an exciting team to be part of. See a lot of benefits of being part of this offense. Mattison, who had short yardage numbers in his career, said, I definitely expect to be in this role of using my pads and physicality. The physicality in me being a bigger bruiser type of back was mentioned by Mike McDaniel. So there you go. I was blessed with a certain type of running style and technique that allows me to break tackles. Mattison, who has run for 2,790 yards in 6 seasons, said, downhill, fast, physical are 3 words I would pin to the way I run. It looks like the Dolphins will open up the safety competition amongst Ifeatu Malafanu, Ashton Davis, Elijah Campbell, 3 veterans who have never been full-time starters, and 2 starters emerge. There's a good chance, and don't forget Patrick McMorris is in that mix too. There's a good chance that a draft pick could join that mix, and the Dolphins could add a veteran safety this summer if they're concerned about the position in May, June, or July. It's going to be a good competition, said Davis. That was a huge thing for me, looking for somewhere with an opportunity to prove to myself and an organization. Okay, on the running back situation, y'all know where I stand. If my boy Bashal Tutin is sitting there, I hyped him up before the combine. I've hyped him on this channel. I've hyped him on Twitter. If that boy Tutin is on that board in that 4th round, but Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech, I think they're going to add another guy. Maybe a DJ Giddens. I know the league's high on him. I know, speaking of the U, maybe Damian Martinez. You got Brashad Smith out of SMU, Raheem Sanders out of South Carolina, Devin Neal out of Kansas, maybe Trevor Etienne still on the board. I do think Gene T, Caleb Johnson, Amarian Hampton, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins will probably be gone. Chance probably Cam Scatabo is gone. Maybe they add a Scatabo or a Tutton. I'm telling you, listen, let me tell you this right now. I'm telling you, Mike McDaniel saw Bashal Tutton at the combine and said, get me him, right? 5'9", 206, ran a 4.32, 40.5-inch vertical, 10.10 broad jump. Remember, I've been hyping this kid up for quite some time out of Virginia Tech. He made my man crush list and everything. I'm telling you, go watch Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech. Put in Tutin, T-U-T-E-N, Virginia Tech, and go watch him on YouTube. Watch that kid. He's powerful. He'll run through defenders. He'll run past defenders. He's got the long speed we need. Man, you add him into the mix, and all of a sudden, that's a deadly backfield, especially if you're planning to use Achane as more of a receiver this year. Now, let's get into Patrick Paul. So, are the Miami Dolphins potentially planning to move off of Patrick Paul in the draft? The left tackle question, even though the Dolphins have 2024 second-round pick Patrick Paul in line to replace Teron Armstead if Armstead retires, people in the game keep citing left tackle as one of the Dolphins' biggest remaining priorities. That group includes agent Drew Rosenhaus, who has emphasized left tackle repeatedly in this weekly segment on the Fox affiliate and with ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. Meanwhile, former Dolphins executive Mike Tannenbaum projected Ohio State's Josh Simmons a natural tackle to Miami with the 13th pick in his mock draft on Tuesday. Tannenbaum noted that Miami drafted Paul last year, and there's some promise there, but the value of Simmons is great. He has outstanding footwork, punch, and length. My only two questions: is he healthy coming off season-ending knee injury? And can he cut down the penalties after getting 26 over 32 games? Mel Kiper. Remember, Mel Kiper had us taking Will Campbell. Now, yes, this could be... I believe Josh Simmons is represented by Drew Rosenhaus. This could be, a agent play. It very well could be. But I think Will Campbell, if he's drafted, is playing. If we draft Will Campbell, Patrick Paul, if Armstead doesn't come, is starting at left tackle. Okay? First, a couple things I want to say here. Number one, did we just forget that they re-signed Liam Eichenberg? Okay? Like, if they got that much faith in Liam Eichenberg, you expect them to move off Patrick Paul that quickly? Not going to happen. And I'm going to tell you this. I would be mad at Josh Simmons that high. I would be furious if they took Josh Simmons that high. I'm going to be honest with you. I like him, but no. I don't have a first-round grade on Josh Simmons. I don't. Okay, if you got Will Campbell as a tackle, he would be higher than him. Armand Membo is higher than him for me. Kelvin Banks Jr., Josh Connerly, Jonas Savanneh, if you want to play my tackle, would be higher to me. Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota is higher to me. Josh Simmons is like my OT6. And if you count Will Campbell as a tackle, then Josh Simmons is like my OT7. I'd rather get a guy like Anthony Belton in the middle rounds from North Carolina State. I'm just not Josh Simmons. I'd rather draft Donovan Jackson in the second, who I know can play guard, but also gives you tackle flexibility because he looked really good at tackle with Ohio State. I'd rather take Donovan Jackson in the second than take Josh Simmons at 13. Are you crazy? It's the same thing with Tyler Booker. I wouldn't touch Booker at 13. Jonas Savanneh over Booker, right? I would take Jonas Savanneh at 48 over Booker at 13. Same thing here. I'd take Donovan Jackson at 48 over Josh Simmons at 13. Ozzie Trapillo, funny enough, is my tackle ranked right after Josh Simmons. He's my OT7, and if you count Campbell, he's my OT8. He's right after Simmons. So, yeah, taking Josh Simmons, that's why you're not a GM in the league, Tannenbaum, okay? Donovan Jackson at 48 is much better value than Josh Simmons at 13, and they go to the same damn school, bud. So you got no excuse. Now, Patrick Paul, man, they're not going to, listen, if they draft Campbell, it's to play guard. But I will say this, if you draft Campbell and he starts off at guard and Paul doesn't look like he's working out after next year if Taron Armstead doesn't come back, you could kick Campbell back out to tackle in year 2 and see what you got there at tackle. Now, I think Banks fits better at tackle, but he could play guard for you if you really wanted him to. And same scenario, let him play guard for a year. If you don't like what you see from Patrick Paul, cut the cords. Don't do Liam Eichenberg all over again where you... Because this is where we come back with Patrick Paul. And this is where I've scratched my head and I've talked to you guys about this. You look at Taron Armstead. You look at Connor Williams. You look at Aaron Brewer, right? You look at James Daniels. You look at how these guys move compared to how Patrick Paul moves, how Liam Eichenberg moves, how Robert Jones moves. There's clearly a conflict going on. I don't know what it is because these guys have contradicting athletic profiles and styles to their game, right? Robert Jones, they try to fit him into a zone when he's clearly a power gap man guy. We're going through the same, scenario here. So I don't know what's going on. I've talked about this. It doesn't make sense. It's all over the map. That's why I've theorized are Greer and McDaniel at an impasse on what the offensive line philosophy should be for drafting players and what those athletic profiles and styles should be that they're looking for, because they just don't match. Like replacing Taron Armstead with Patrick Paul. It's like from a movement ability alone. Like what are we doing here? So, I will say this, and I've said this. Patrick Paul and what I saw from last year, a good coach, a good GM, that wouldn't stop you from drafting a Will Campbell or an Armand Membo if they fell into your lap, or if you had Kelvin Banks rated really high. I said I think Greer's going to really love Josh Connerly. If you got these guys rated that high, what you saw last year shouldn't stop you. He's not a sure thing. He's an unknown. Now, the problem is he's not a guard, and he was a disaster at right tackle. So you've kind of pigeoned yourself to a natural left tackle. That might be an issue. It's not like you can move this guy around. It didn't look good when he moved to right tackle. But again, I go back to my original point. Look how long Greer stuck it out with Liam Eichenberg. You really think he's going to quit that quick on Paul? So, yeah, I think Mel Kiper makes more sense because he comes from a standpoint of, he can play tackle, but Campbell can also play guard and kick in. Josh Simmons doesn't make sense. Josh Simmons just doesn't make sense to me. So, but I do agree from the standpoint, if the right player falls you in the right position, Patrick Paul didn't show you enough last year to stop you from taking a potentially better player. And you can say that at a ton of different positions, right? You can say that for Julian Hill at tight end too. You can say that for Liam Eichenberg and Larry Borum at left guard. You can say that for Benito Jones in the rotation next to, or Calais Campbell, who you don't know if it's coming back, next to as a running mate for Zach Sealer. You could say that for Cam Smith and Artie Burns and what you've added to the corner room. You could say that for safety if the right guy falls to you, with Melifonu's injury history and Ashton Davis' injury history and Elijah Campbell being an unknown and McMorris being an unknown. So they've done that across the board on the roster where you got guys you feel comfortable you could get by with, but if the right guy falls at any of those positions, what you have at those positions shouldn't stop you from taking one of those guys. So that's how I view it. Now let's get into this. This is very interesting. Albert Breer from Monday Morning Quarterback on Sports Illustrated, they were talking about Tua, McDaniel, and a potential reset. And there's an article I want to go over too after this that leads into that. So let's talk about this. They say some interesting things. So let's go over this.
I feel like I could say it with the Dolphins because I've been saying it for years. It's this lack of physical toughness, a ground control running game that's bothered me about this team for a super long time. And last year, you ended up having Miami, and yards per carry is a bad metric, but a lot of the good teams, right? The Ravens were number 1, the Eagles were number 5, the Packers were number 6, the Lions were number 7, the Niners were number 9, the Bills were number 11, I think. And so a lot of these teams, the good teams, are way up there. And down at the bottom, you have the Dolphins at 4 yards a carry. And again, you build this thing around
that's even
speed.
Boosted up by big plays.
Right. And you build it exactly. And so it's one of those things where it's like, at some point, does it, without that Raven-esque, Chargers-esque, Philly-esque kind of meat and potatoes to your core, are you always going to struggle to some degree when, and Mike McDaniel's had in 2023, they were 6th in rushing yards. They were 1st in rushing touchdowns. They were 1st in yards per attempt. But in 2022 and 2024, they weren't top 20. And again,
You're right,
just
Sammy.
like we're talking about the Falcons putting a lot on Tua,
You're right.
or a lot on Penix. That's a lot on Tua, and it's a quarterback that we still, I'm sorry, and I'm going to get killed for this, we don't know if he's great or not. We just don't, you know?
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah, and I think like and they did so much to make everything right around him. He gets the big contract, and now what if Tyreek Hill loses a step or gets hurt, and now you're relying on Jaelan Waddle, who's a really good player, and like Nick Westbrook-Akina, like to me it's like, again, you're looking at a situation where you're asking that guy to lift everybody up, which he's going to have to do eventually when you pay him like that, right? Like when you pay a guy like that, it has to be part of the deal. And I don't know for sure that he can, just because we haven't seen him do it, like, so
Ravens come back.
It's an interesting spot to be in. And can he stay healthy? Like that's the other thing. I mean, he's in that equation too, of, older or, constantly hurt. Like he's on the latter end of that, you know what I mean? The constantly hurt end of it. Like it's just there's a lot of realities that I think this team is going to be facing, where it's like, it wouldn't surprise me if we're looking at like a teardown after this year,
Right.
Like if we're looking at them going in and saying, okay, like now's the time we got to tear it down. Like this is the last shot with this group of players.
Do you think that, 'cause it's so hard, because what Mike McDaniel has brought to the fold has been this wave of credibility, at least on the social emotional side, right? Yeah. The Dolphins are routinely number one in the NFLPA report cards, which I know are something that everybody loves. But the teams who are Fs don't love it. But the Dolphins are routinely crushing it in terms of some of the stuff that Mike has done. And I will say, like, the staff that has been there in place for a long time. There's a lot of good people.
They deserve a lot of credit for that. Like,
for
brand new facility. Like, part of it's being in Miami, I'm sure, but that's generally like it. When you walk into that building, it seems like it's a good place to work.
Right. So do you give Mike the chance to
listen what they say,
pick a different general manager and chart a different course? Do you blow the whole thing up? And
I do. I 100%.
I do.
I 100% would, like, because I think you found a guy who clearly has been able to maximize a lot of guys, and like I look at like the history over the last couple of years. Now you have some questions about the defensive coordinator thing. I think to some degree he was sort of forced to hold on to Josh Boyer, who was a good coach, but wasn't a fit for what Mike was looking for. You had the Fangio year, which obviously didn't work out for anyone involved. And I think part of that was maybe because Vic wanted to be in Philly the whole time. Right. And then last year, it looks like maybe you've got it figured out now with Anthony Weaver, who you eventually could lose because he's starting to get a lot of interest from teams looking to make him the head coach. So like I look at like the job he's done maximizing guys on offense. I look at the job that he has done building a culture, and I'd be really interested to see what that looks like with younger players, with like, we don't need to force it. So we have an answer on a quarterback right now. If they were going to build a little bit more deliberately, like, what Mike was a part of in San Francisco, and he gets to develop his own guys, and he has a big say in what types of guys they're bringing in, and, the sort of player profile, which he already has that to some degree. But if they really hit the reset button, I'd be really interested to see what that looked like.
See what he said? He has that to some degree. And I go back to the point I was just making about the conflict in the offensive line. Like, remember, McDaniel wanted to take Achane at the spot we took Cam Smith, but Greer stood his ground and said, no, we're taking Cam Smith. Now, which guy ended up being right? Now, obviously, Greer was right in the sense of we can wait till the third round, but McDaniel nailed the player. Greer's whiffed to this point. It's the same thing with the offensive line. I bet you Greer was like, I like Patrick Paul. I like what we see in Patrick Paul. Blah, blah, blah. It's like he just said, to some degree, he's got. Now, what did they talk about? Breer said, if this doesn't work, it feels like, because he talked about earlier in the segment, I didn't play the part, but he talked about how it feels like they may have missed their window, but if they are still in that window and they blow this up, it's either you tear it all down or you basically keep Mike McDaniel, you find a new GM, but you let Mike McDaniel work hand in hand with that GM of filling out the roster from an athletic profile that he likes, etc. standpoint, and you let them find naturally and organically their own guy at quarterback. You know, he talked about how Josh Boyer was forced on him, which we all knew. Liam Eichenberg, I've talked, go even further. Danny Crossman was forced on him. Liam Eichenberg, Austin Jackson were forced on him. Tua, yeah, he was willing and open to make it happen and make it work, but Tua was part of the deal. Like, we want you to keep getting the most out of this draft pick that we spent a top 5 pick on. So it's, what do? Blow it up? Or do you give him full reign and let him roll and see what he's got? Now, an interesting thing to me would be, with the Miami Dolphins and the Shanahan tree. Check this out. This is from the Rams. This is from Rams on SI. If Dolphins rebuild in 2026, does Chris Shula make sense? Make no mistake about it, if Chris Shula emulates the success of the Rams defense in 2025, he would get looks to be an NFL head coach in 2026. Atlanta Falcons head coach and former Rams DC Raheem Morris has supported Shula and expects him to be a head coach soon, and he has the goods to thrive in the role. However, could the answer be coming sooner rather than later on where Shula could be going? Well, the NFL loves narratives, and the Miami Dolphins could be on the verge of the biggest rebuild in franchise history. There's no indication to believe Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel and or Chris Grier, the GM, are fighting for the jobs, but there seems to be constant questions regarding the organization after report 2024 with a roster full of bad contracts. Tua Tagovailoa's health was once again an issue, and Tyreek Hill has been constantly mentioned in trade talks, with some of the team's big-time investments not contributing to the success of the team in the ways desired. Miami also let Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins walk last season, to the annoyance of many. If Miami does clean house, we've already seen the influence the Rams have over the NFL, and let's not ignore Jacksonville turning into Rams South. Narratives drive ticket prices, and having Shula, the grandson of legendary Dolphins head coach Don Shula, come in to rebuild the organization would see the tickets go through the roof. Shula himself knows all about rebuilds, having participated in one with the Rams. Plus, he's connected to the legendary John Carroll inner circle of football minds, giving him many connections around the league. Miami has a well-known discipline problem. Shula organized a defense filled with rookies and second-year players that shut teams down. That was without Aaron Donald, who had retired in the 2024 offseason. Do not be surprised to see Shula as a head coach option next year, especially if the Dolphin job opens. He is able to do everything the Dolphins need in order to execute a rebuild. His Rolodex is large enough to bring in the people needed to win, and his last name will give him the grace and time to actually perform a full rebuild with high-character players. McVay assistants going on to become head coaches isn't exactly a new phenomenon. Perhaps it's Miami's time to cash in. Wow. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, interview Chris Shula, but let's see what Anthony Weaver's got. This is why, if things go sideways next year, I want to change next season so we can at least have a half season to see what Anthony Weaver's got. So if he isn't the answer, you can go into the offseason and you know that, and you can tell him you're moving on, and you can look at these options like if a Chris Shula is available. So this is why, if things go belly up next year, it ain't going to be good for me and the channel, but let them go belly up out of the gate. So at least we get answers early on, and at least we can make a coaching switch and get answers to see if Weaver's a good option. And then you could promote Bevel to offensive coordinator, because Frank Smith would have to go too, I think, So, but listen, I'm telling you, if things go belly up next year, Weaver comes in and they continue to not look good under Weaver, yeah, let's see what Chris Shula's got. The McVay coaching tree, they produce good minds, great minds, and it's an extension of That Shanahan tree. And McVay, let's be honest, has there been anyone more successful than McVay from Kyle Shanahan's tree? Probably not. I mean, McDaniel hasn't even produced a coach yet. Right? This guy's produced multiple coaches from his staff. So, yeah, I'm just saying. Show me what you got. So, guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. I appreciate each and every one of you coming through for today's episode on this hump day. Oh, sorry, no, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow there is hump day, and there is we will not be doing a finish line because Richmond has other obligations. All right, just a reminder. Now, continuing on here. I know a lot of us are worried. So James Daniels, he spoke to the media today. James Daniels said this. James Daniels didn't mince words when asked about his Achilles injury. Achilles injury is in the contract year. The quality I was playing last year, honestly, it was brutal. Said Daniels, who tore his Achilles September 29, 2024. That's a tough thing to happen. Daniels, however, will be back in time for training camp. The new Miami Dolphins signee said Monday, a good sign considering the need for strong offensive guard play after the team's dismal rushing offense in 2024. I'm going to be fully healthy when the season starts, Daniels said. He tore his Achilles during the Pittsburgh Steelers Week 4 matchup with the Indianapolis Colts. The 2018 second-round pick was in the midst of a career season, accumulating a PFF grade of 92.9, which ranks second amongst all guards. The similarity between the Steelers and the Dolphins schemes happened to be one of the major reasons why Daniels chose Miami. The outside zone scheme, that's what I was playing in Pittsburgh, and that's what I did back in Iowa, Daniels said, explaining the scheme requires him to play fast and attack. So much of the man scheme is double teams and fitting in and the driving people slow. With outside zone scheme, you're expected to attack and play with speed. I feel like my best year last year in the NFL, my best tape was playing in this type of scheme, and I'm excited against the chance to play in it again. Although Daniels excelled at right guard in 2024, he has experience on the left side and at center. Not even the Dolphins have given the number 36 overall pick any indication where he'll play. They're still figuring things out, Daniels said. They just said during OTAs they will have a plan. On one hand, he can stick at right guard and alongside tackle Austin Jackson build a formidable wall for quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's blind side. Conversely, the Dolphins could opt to switch Daniels to the left to help out second-year left tackle Patrick Paul, who could be the likely replacement for Teron Armstead if he chooses to retire. I feel at home anywhere, Daniels said. Yes, I played right guard the past few seasons, but in Chicago, I played left guard, and I played center as well. Added Daniels, it really doesn't matter because the coach is teaching the same technique to the left guard. He's teaching the same technique to the right tackle, left tackle. Techniques are the same. He's not coaching people differently. The former Iowa offensive lineman started his career at left guard with Chicago Bears. Daniels then switched between center and both guard positions before he signed with the Steelers in the 2022 offseason. Primarily played right guard in Pittsburgh. In early March, Daniels reportedly signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Dolphins. According to Miami Herald's Barry Jackson, for Miami, the deal made sense considering the team finished 21st in rushing offense. That comes just 1 year after the Dolphins fielded the 6th best rushing offense. Daniels, meanwhile, ranked second in run blocking among all guards through 4 games of the 2024 season. It's a really good offense to play in, a really fun offense to play in, Daniels said. Adding, the style of play of the offense plays in my strength, and there's a lot of playmakers. The hope is that if the Dolphins reestablish their ground game, all else will follow. Daniels knows this. Even more accurate, he knows the Dolphin fans view him as a key cog in their team's offensive success. Every free agent signing, especially when it's a multi-year deal for a total of double digits, you understand that you're being signed to a team for a reason, Daniels said. Financially, when they're giving you that much money, you're expected to come in and be a change to the team. I understand the position I'm in, and I understand that the Dolphins believe a lot in me, and their fans are expecting a lot of me. So there you go. We'll end the show with some good news. He looks like he's going to be ready to go for the season. Hopefully he's good to go in the preseason so we can get some live reps, get the motor turning in training camp. We want to see that get a little worked up. We don't want to have them thrown to the wolves in September, without getting ramped up and worked up into that stage. So, hey, got the answer at right guard. Let's hope they can find another guard, not named Liam Eichenberger, Larry Borum, and those guys are relegated to where they belong. That's nothing more than depth. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. I am going to be back when I'm back Thursday. I'll be back with Neil. Saturday, I am looking to drop my guard big board, so be on the lookout for that. Got a lot of content coming your way. And I will catch you on the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. Smash that like button. We are about 2,900 away to 3K, and I want to do a 5-person giveaway, so allow me to do that for you, all right? Patreon and channel member update will be coming in the next few days as well. I got a good one for you, all right? So be on the lookout for that. If you're a Patreon, be on the lookout. If you want to join the Patreon, go join it, all right? See y'all in the next one.